from. I can read from the chat, my colleague and brother saying Namaste, all the way from Nepal. And I say Namaste to you as well. I hope that is the response to that. Once again, we are indeed very, very pleased to have you join us for this very unique and very important session within our Ringo community. As you join us, please kindly keep your microphone on mute. Also, do tell us where you're joining us from. Just give us your name, the town you're joining us from. And one important thing that is, triggering everyone right now is what is the weather like where you are? For those of us who are following the World Cup, you would see that it rains in some of the cities. There are thunderstorms in other cities, but where I am in Yaoundé in Cameroon, it has been bright and sunny. Unfortunately, my national team is not at the World Cup, but of course, we are rooting for Ghana and all African countries. I don't know which country you're rooting for. Some would say England, some would say USA, some would say Cape Verde. Whichever country you're rooting for, we are standing with you and supporting you in that. Once again, please just, I can see David from Corporation Canada. Thank you for joining. Sat Siri Akar from a very steamy, hot London. Oh my God. I don't know if I can say you should open your windows or it's to turn on your heat, your fan, for some fresh air to keep the environment cool. Mary from Ghana, Maud from the Netherlands, David from Germany, Irene from Dakar. Comment ça va, Irene? C'est très, très gentil d'être avec toi cet après-midi. Sarah from Toronto, Canada. It is indeed a pleasure to have all these wonderful colleagues and partners of Ringo joining us in this very important session. This is indeed a very special session, one in which together we are going to be leveraging years of collaboration, years of working together within the Ringo community to rethink about the future of global civil society and how Ringo should position itself moving forward. And to kickstart this conversation, permit me to invite the very wonderful Dr. Nana Asantewa Afajino, Executive Director of the West Africa Civil Society Institute. And of course, I like the way she came into this meeting with a very optimistic look, gaining inspiration from the Black Stars of Ghana. Nana, over to you, please.
Why am I wearing this today? Yesterday, Black Stars stopped England. And actually, it's because we changed our coach a few months before, the World Cup. And even though everybody was very concerned, they reviewed the Black Stars, realized that within the context of the World Cup, we needed another coach. And the coach himself also looked at the context. Why is that important? What does it have to do with Ringo? Was it Socrates who said an unexamined life is not worth living? And we don't want to make that mistake. So it's really time to examine Ringo within the current context. And in this session, we want to consult with you. You are the Ringo community, about the path that we should follow next. It's been 5 years already. Some of you will remember how we started Ringo behind our computers during COVID, within the lockdown period, in the lockdown period. And yet we connected very meaningfully as a Ringo community. Many of you were part of this. So after 5 years of developing, we've developed innovations, built community, working to reimagine what an equitable global civil society should look like. This is the time that we think we need to really look at Ringo within the context. The funding for the kind of work we are doing is now increasingly constrained, and the systems change, wider systems change, landscape is evolving. So we want to take stock. And there are also many brilliant initiatives that are, challenging the status quo in different ways. And many of you are part of these different, initiatives that are happening. So today, my colleagues and I at Ringo, and together with all of you, we would want to really look at Ringo and see where do we go from here? How do we continue to add value to the work that we are all doing and all think is very important. So, we will be sharing an overview of our journey. We have from the reports that we did, the very first one, Voices from the South report, which really anchored the work that was being done in 2020. Through phase one, we convened the Ringo Social Lab. We came up with different ideas of different ways of working, developed different prototypes, some of which, are really being tested currently. Phase two, where we focused on influencing key power holders in international development. So we had action boards for funders and, INGO board members, to the current phase where we are really emphasizing partnerships and community building. Now, we would hear some of the streams of work that, are also continuing. Then some of the new areas that Ringo is really looking at, the environment, within the environment sector, and also the emerging work with African civil society. But we also recognize that the energy around the current configuration that we have is shifting. So we have to make some real choices. From our beginning as Ringo, we have built community and consulted that community at different stages. And this is one of the moments for us. So this session will bring us together to really explore how do we evolve to strengthen the wider ecosystem on our own and also with partners. And we will be spending some time in breakout rooms to reflect and explore ideas in small groups, because then many of us are, more of us are able to make contributions. And then we come back into plenary to share our insights. By the way, this is the last of our monthly Ringo Connect meetings. We've been having regular Ringo Connect meetings. We will want to thank you all, particularly those who have participated very, richly over the years. We will be convening the Ringo community every now and then, where there are specific themes that we need to engage in and speak about, or share updates on Ringo innovations, but it won't be as regular as it has been. So please keep an eye out for our newsletters and also the posts on LinkedIn. And again, when you meet in Africa, when you meet as a community, we all see each other's faces. And we really engage. It will be wonderful if you can turn on your camera, if you are able, so that we can see your face. We have people here from different parts of the world, a so-called majority world, so-called minority world, from regional, from national, local NGOs, INGOs, intermediaries and funders, academics, different people working in different areas, in different contexts, all working to shift power. So really, this is our space. And I'd like you to welcome you once again to this time together. Let me hand over now to Sparkle to set us off by taking us through the Ringo journey so far. Welcome.
My name's Sparkle, and I'm just going to take you through a whistle-stop tour of the Ringo journey so far. So as Nana mentioned, we launched in 2020 as a systems change initiative, and at that point we were hosted by Rights Collab in the USA. And we started off seeking to facilitate transformational change in global civil society to respond to today's challenges. And I love that right from the outset, we put today's challenges, as it establishes our intention to be agile and be responsive. And over the last 6 years, obviously, the challenges of the day have shifted like pretty dramatically. We can all agree. Oh. Sorry, hang on. During the first phase of Ringo, we started, Nana mentioned our research and the Voices for the South report, which captured views from NGOs in the global majority. And these have allowed us to identify and understand what's needed to foster equitable partnerships and international cooperation. And from that, we convened a social lab of change makers. And it's gorgeous to see so many of these brilliant minds here on the call today. We brought 55 actors together from across civil society, and we took everyone through a process of discovering the barriers to change. So we went through a process of inquiry and sense making. We worked on defining the opportunities to challenge the different areas of stuckness that we identified. And from that, we thought, well, what can we do differently? And so we developed 8 different prototypes that shift power, and we then set about testing them in different contexts to see how they actually worked in practice. So these are the different innovations you can see here. So they were selected through a process with all of the social lab, and they address areas of opportunity in 4 areas that we identified were key for transformation. So you can see there's accountability, impact and measurement, leadership and governance, solidarity and partnerships, and resource flows. And while we were doing the testing of these innovations, we welcomed more members to the social lab. So our numbers actually went up to 95 members. So you can see here under solidarity and partnerships, we trialled a new approach to risk sharing and compliance management. And this involved having really brave conversations to build trust and break down barriers along the value chain. And we also considered how we might use technology to address one of the key barriers to systems change, which keeps coming up. So that's around language and inclusive communication. In leadership and governance, we developed a platform for a decolonising advisory community. And so that was for practitioners in the majority world to come together, build community and share their expertise around the decolonisation process. And we also explored an alternative solidarity model that places the needs of local actors front and centre. And this innovation evolved to be the reverse call for proposals. And we'll speak more about that in a minute. And leadership and and resource flows. We tested and documented how participatory grant making can shift power dynamics. And we also joined forces with the Global Fund for Community Foundations for their campaign to end tied aid to Northern CSOs, a practice that still sees only 7% of funding from bilateral donors go directly to Southern civil society. And you can see also in accountability, impact and measurement, we developed an accountability and learning mechanism with Pledge for Change community, the PALM, which holds INGOs, donors accountable to the local national CSOs that they partner with. And at the end of 2022, we held a big learning festival and it was brilliant. Lots of you were there, or some of you were presenting, brought together like 1,000 members of this community, and we shared our learnings from this whole prototyping process. And the report should be shared in the chat. Oh, hang on a minute. Oh, why has this happened? Hang on, everyone. Sorry. There we go. So in phase 2, we moved into keeping on testing the prototype. 6 of them at this stage were being hosted by various organisations to support their further development and seeking how we could embed them and scale them. But we kept hearing time and again that although actors were on board with these ideas, their efforts were often being blocked by those in higher positions of power. And so this is where we switched to think more about how we can influence change. And we specifically targeted 2 primary stakeholders that we identified. So that was INGO board members and funders. We also conducted a follow-up research study, so Voices from the South 2, that was looking at exactly what INGOs and funders specifically can do to shift power. And from that, we convened these 2 action pods of INGO board members and funders to explore these barriers and see what are the opportunities for change. And throughout this whole process, we were continuing to support the prototypes, and we held various community gatherings, bringing you all together to share the learnings from Ringo prototypes and innovations, but also other ones that we could see throughout the system. And you can also see that Deborah Doan, one of our team members, wrote a book, The INGO Problem, and we produced a guide for a book club. And I think that will be shared in the chat as well. So in phase 3, we thought, well, in phase 2, we zoomed in our efforts to influence specific stakeholders. But in phase 3, we wanted to zoom back out again to emphasize partnerships and community building as essential components for advancing systemic change. So we wanted to expand and nurture the Ringo community at a regional level. So we've been strengthening our partnerships with, for example, Acapulco in Latin America and hosting the in-person convening in Africa, which will take place later this year. We wanted to maximize the impacts of Ringo's learnings and practices on organizations and the broader system. So continuing to host online convenings and also taking up influencing opportunities to take our learnings into different spaces and support the movement more widely. We also wanted to nurture spaces for innovation through support for embedding and scaling the prototypes, and making sure that we capture and document and share these learnings along the way so that we can all use them for advocacy and for collective influence as well as learning. So where are we now? We've got 2 active innovations. We've got the Pledge for Change Accountability and Learning Mechanism, the PALM, and that's embedded within the Pledge for Change community, and it's continuing to evolve, and we'll hear more about that from Mabel in a minute. The reverse call for proposals has really taken off. We've been accompanying 2 cohorts over the past several months, one group of INGOs to think about how they can prepare and get ready to respond to a reverse call for proposals, and working with a cohort of CSOs who've been working with convening their communities and launching reverse calls. And we're delighted that NORSAC, I think you're on the call, NORSAC have just launched theirs. And so hopefully there'll be a link in the chat so you can explore their reverse call and get involved and see how you can make headway into equitable partnerships. We'll be sharing more learnings from the whole cohort process over the next few months, so keep an eye out for that. And also, we're really delighted that Acapulco and New Sims are going to be hosting a Spanish-speaking cohort. So if you're Spanish-speaking or you have Spanish-speaking networks who would like to learn more about reverse call for proposals, please do get in touch. The other innovations have kind of fallen by the wayside for various reasons, but the issues that they sought to address are still very, very much alive. We've had conversations about the risk sharing and compliance management prototype. The issue of untying aid is obviously still ongoing. And we've heard that there's still a need for a decolonizing advisory community. So these ideas are out there, the resources are available, our learnings are on our website for you to look at so far. And we've obviously been hosting these gorgeous spaces. So the Ringo Connect meetings have been a beautiful monthly space for the community to come together and shift from lamenting to solutioning. That's what we wanted to do, and foster a sense of community and solidarity and break down silos between sectors. We've also held different meetings in response to as the landscape has changed, like questioning how we can keep locally led development on the table when things are moving at such a pace. And we've been taking up influencing opportunities to share the Ringo learnings in different spaces, on platforms and forums, and actively standing in solidarity with other systems change initiatives. So in addition to our original plans, we've also been focusing on the environment sector, which we feel is a sector that is often less engaged with the shifting the power conversation. So Mabel, my colleague, will share some information about our work there. And Charles, I'll pass on to you in a moment, and he will tell you more about our Africa convening, the in-person convening that will happen towards the end of this year. So that's Ringo so far. Our USP has always been that we're action-oriented, that we focus on learning by doing and moving from ideas to action, and we're offering practical solutions with our innovations. And our community has always been so important to us, and we hope that we've been serving as a catalyst and a connector. And in terms of influencing, we've gained strong credibility in this sector. But we also recognise that there are many fantastic systems change initiatives that are evolving and have been active for a long time now. And as Nana said, we want to make sure that we're complementing rather than duplicating efforts. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to pass over to Mabel and Charles, who are going to talk about some of the work that we know is going to be continuing and still emerging. Thank you.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Sparkle, for that very brilliant overview. So, in addition to the initiatives that you have just mentioned, like you had spoken about, the Pledge for Change, Accountability, and Learning Mechanism. Fortunately, I see some of the people who had participated in the first session in this group, and it's also really nice to have them. And for those of us who are joining us today for the first time, the Pledge for Change, Accountability, and Learning Mechanism, what we are calling the PALM, is one of the prototypes that emerged from the Ringo initiative. And what it seeks to do is to move away from the conventional approach of accountability. So it's not just looking at organizations being accountable to INGOs or funders, but it's also looking at INGOs and funders being accountable to the organizations and the partners they work with. So it's basically aimed at holding INGOs accountable and effective partnerships. The second is on authentic storytelling. And the third is on influencing the wider change. So the first session was initiated in 2024, and there was a survey that was sent out. Partners responded to the survey, and the findings were disseminated early last year in the month of April. So my colleague would be sharing the report from these findings in the chat section so that those of us who would want to know more would also just go through the reports. So we would be continuing with this initiative. When we shared the findings from last year, it was also to give room for these INGOs to pick up on the recommendations and begin implementation. So we have started with the second session of the PALM, and we just started this year. So we are also looking at ensuring that we round up with the process early this year, because last year we got feedback that some of the INGOs were not given ample time to be able to implement the recommendations that came in from the last report. So we are trying to complete the process this year earlier enough so that we give the organizations, the INGOs, the whole of next year to be able to digest the findings from the reports and have enough time to begin implementation. So the second session of the PALM is taking place this year, and hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to come up with the findings and have a session to produce these findings to the larger audience. Then, with respect to the work around the environment sector, like Sparkle mentioned, yes, we had also gotten feedback on the fact that organizations in the environment sector were not necessarily deliberately involved in conversations around development. So we sought out to have some work done around this, which basically seeks to understand the needs and the challenges of both INGOs and NGOs working in the environment sector. So late last year, some of us may have seen the survey. We sent out a survey. There were two different surveys, one to those who are INGOs in the sector and the other one to NGOs. And we are currently working on just doing an analysis of the findings. The whole idea behind the survey was to understand the needs and the challenges of the organizations that work in this sector, and also to see how we can in the wider influence change within this sector. So we are currently doing an analysis of the findings, and in the coming months, we would be having a session to disseminate these findings. And we are hoping that those of us who are here, especially those of us who are in the environment sector, will be part of this session so that we can have wider conversations around this work. So these are some of the initiatives that I would also be continuing with. And I would now be handing over to Charles to talk to us more about the Africa at the Center convening, which is coming up in the first week of September.
Thank you so much, Mabel, and hello to everyone. Sorry, I'm a bit in a noisy environment, so bear with me. So a lot of folks who've heard about the Africa at the Center convening have asked us, why are we organizing this? And it's quite simple. We are trying to galvanize the voices and perspectives about how development could be done or how development can be reimagined by different stakeholders within Africa and beyond Africa. This is a continent that has incredible leaders, organizations, communities, innovators, but yet, many times, or there are too many times where decisions about how our development continues to be influenced by other actors and, of course, institutions outside the continent. So the idea of the convening is about creating a space for Africans on the continent and Africans in the diaspora to shape African solutions, so that we can move from this idea of us being passive recipients in the development process to kind of shaping and becoming the architects of our own future. The convening tagline is leading change, shifting power, which aligns closely with the work that we've been doing over the years with Ringo and the broader Shift the Power movement. We're hoping to bring together civil society leaders, African funders, international funders, systems change practitioners, some community actors, members of professional associations, members of the African diaspora, who are committed to building a more equitable and locally led development systems. And as Mabel said, the gathering will be taking place in Accra from the 1st to the 3rd of September. There's going to be a lot more information going out from next month about this in terms of logistics and coordination. And for us, it's not just a 3-day event. It's part of a broader journey that includes conversations before the convening itself and then collective action afterwards. So we're going to have some webinars, hopefully 2 webinars before that convening as a way of gathering the momentum towards the convening. It's going to be highly participatory, and we're trying to move away from, just presentations and identifying challenges and, talking about what doesn't work, but more towards, generating ideas and coming up with practical solutions and building partnerships across the various stakeholders that will be invited. So the emphasis for us in the convening is more on collaboration, on learning and action. And so somebody asked me, I think yesterday when I talked about this, he said, what is the bigger significance? I mean, why is this different from all the other convenings? And I said, this is not going to be one of those things that will become a talk shop where we're talking about shifting power, but we are actually trying to design it in a way to show examples of actually what shift the power looks like in practice. What we want is stronger African leaderships, stronger local institutions. We're fighting for more equitable partnerships, of course, new ways of mobilizing resources and driving change, right? So we're hoping that this convening will contribute significantly in terms of the conversations on systems, on African-led systems that could actually shape the development architecture as we have it now. So this is Africa at the center. Thank you so much, Mabel.
Thank you very much, Charles, Mabel, Sparkle, for the wonderful information shared with all of us. Dear colleagues, it has really been an exciting journey, like Nana said, 6 years. And Sparkle gave us a wonderful rundown of what has transpired up to this moment. Some of us have been part of that journey. A couple of us have played active roles to make sure that some of the prototypes were initiated, and most importantly, that some of these prototypes saw the light of day. It is very important within this session for us to reflect on all of this and ask critical questions that will enable us frame how things can continue moving forward in our effort to reimagine, the sector. And in that light, we will be moving to breakout rooms at the moment, and there will be 3 principal questions at the center of the table for us to discuss within respective groups. First of all, is Ringo still fit for purpose given that the context has changed since we began 5 to 6 years ago? If you think Ringo should continue beyond our currently funded commitments, what contribution do you think we can focus on making as Ringo? And if you think it's time for Ringo to move towards closure, what's your advice about how we can close well? These three questions will be shared in our respective groups. There will be a Google link, shared in the chat. And depending on the group that you are in, kindly do well to nominate someone in your group to capture the talking points that are emerging or that will emerge from our respective groups. We will be very happy to hear your thoughts on where you think Ringo's distinct contributions lies in the days ahead. Of course, we do have limited resources, and we really want to think carefully about the way forward, the strategy, the options, the unique position, and where Ringo may fit best in the months ahead. So please kindly do well to reflect in your respective groups and share ideas that could help us collectively achieve this. So at this juncture, we will be moving into our breakout rooms for discussions. Again, there will be very small breakout rooms between 7 and 10 persons max to give us ample time to share ideas on the three questions that will be shared with us. There will be a member from the Ringo core team in our respective groups. But of course, we are not there, to lead the conversations. We are there to gain inspiration from what will be shared. So please, when you're in your groups, take the lead to steer the conversations and nominate someone to capture the emerging points that are coming up from your respective groups. So again, the Google link will be shared in the chat for us to make use of. And on our screens now, I'll invite the very wonderful tech team to kindly guide us to move into the polls. Colleagues, it's always a difficult moment coming back from the breakout rooms, but very glad to see all of us joining. And I'm sure my colleague Deborah Dunn will take us into the next conversation. But thank you all for contributing to the breakout rooms. Thank you.
As usual, hello everyone. It went too fast, way too fast, and we were just getting interesting discussions going, of course. But thank you so much. We're just going to do a little sense check. I know what the answer is from my room, but I don't know what it was from the other rooms, and there are, I think, 9 different rooms or something. So we're going to put up a quick poll in Zoom. I'm not sure who's putting that poll up. Someone is putting it up in the tech team. And we're going to ask 4 questions. The first one is, Ringo should continue engaging the environment sector and convening African civil society for the foreseeable future. So those are the things that Mabel and Charles presented. So that's stuff that's ongoing anyways. Ringo should hand over developing new innovations or mainstreaming our existing innovations and convening activities to others who are already convening around other similar areas. 3, Ringo should wind up its activities and aim to just close well. That's an option. Or 4, random question, Ringo should focus on new streams of work. And if you think that's the case, please add them into the chat. So answer the survey. And we'll keep that poll open for a minute. So continue just the work that Charles and Mabel mentioned, environment sector specifically, where they were quite a bit behind the development sector, convening African civil society in particular. We do have, and what's missing here is we do have ACAPACA in Latin America that is convening some of this work for a Latin American Spanish-speaking audience, by the way. Ringo should hand over innovations and convening activities to others, like ACAPACA. Wind up its activities and aim to close well in the coming months or focus on new streams of work. And please put those ideas into the chat. There's a few things. There's someone's put up ACAPACA. Anything else? Give that about 30 seconds more. Do you think, Jim? Rebecca? Great. So what we're just going to do, let me find my session lab. Okay. Shall we, would anyone just like to speak to any of those? Does anyone want to come in and offer their thoughts, explain your responses that you may have given? Would anyone like to come in? And is recording pressed again, please, Patrick? Ah, it is. I can see it is. Who would like to come in? Maybe take me off spotlight so I can see names of people. Would that be okay? Thank you. If anyone wants to come in, what your thoughts are, why you selected the thing that you did, I might call on some long-standing friends of Ringo. Is that Smith or Nwoko?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So I chose one and two, which is Ringo should continue with the environmental space and then still be on the spot, and then okay, handing over developing mainstream innovation. Okay, yeah. So why I chose the two is that we still need Ringo in the space because it's just like the SG goals, right? That you propounded is for how many years? Can you imagine years? So I don't think that 6 years is enough to have elapsed your technical expertise and all that, right? I think we still need more of brains of Ringo, their technical expertise, resources, and everything. So in our session, I probably mentioned, I even gave a sort of timeline. If we can make up it up with 10 years, I think that will be a balance. So let's say like more 4 years, so that it will sink in, within the CSO or within the local actors and all that they can, adapt and then be able to now move to the second phase where Ringo will be able to now, like hand over, that expertise to them. Probably they have learned, the local actors will be able to have that knowledge enough to now be able to, do the work very well and even innovate, right? So that is why I chose it. So living is not an option at this point in time, in my own thought. Yes. So if you're leaving, you're still leaving a bit early because I mean, even the Ringo news have not really spread very well. So we need to look up or we want to amplify it, more, amplify the work, spread it very well, so that basically all the CSO local actors will become part of it very well. We'll now be sure that yes, you can now leave, and then we'll take the ladder up. So those are my reasons for choosing
Thank
the.
you.
Thank you.
Our work is never done. Uh, lots of things coming into the chat. Marlon, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yes, and they come from actually the conversation we just had in the group really helped me with the poll. And I think building on the point that was just made, I think transformation, for transformation to happen, it takes time, you know. And I think the gentleman that just spoke is correct. Like you're halfway there, Usually I've worked in the development space for many years, and for transformation to happen, it takes 10 or more years, if you're working with a community and so I think that not enough time has gone by, number one. Number two, I think someone in my group said, the group that the work that that Ringo has done really fills a niche. And that there is no other organization or group that's actually focusing on the issues that Ringo has focused on. There are many groups out there, and the environment has changed over the last 5 years with rising authoritarianism and tight aid and less aid and all of these things. But in the middle of all of that, the work that you guys have done fills a gap that no one else is focusing on in terms of connecting and building and scaling, kind of majority world energy and mobilization that is on the rise. So, yeah, all to say, I think that the work is not done yet. Maybe there's scope to do some different things, given, adapting to kind of the current environment, but not putting your foot off the pedal of some of the core things that you've been focused on, because that work is not done yet.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marlon. Lots coming out in the chat. I don't want to duplicate it. I'd rather hear the voices on the screen, but I will do a summary of what's in the chat. Dio, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. And I just posted something on the chat now, which is where I want to anchor my contribution. It's an article that was just recently published. And it's not related to this, but it's a newspaper article that I did, asking the questions: who gets to fund democracy in Nigeria? And I think if, and again, please pardon me, my intention is not to second guess why this conversation about sunsetting Ringo, is happening at this point. But if my experience is anything to go by, um, donors will normally have 5, 6 years, 10 years. They have a terminal point at which they can, they come up and decide at this stage we are shifting our focus. And if that is what is happening to Ringo today, I think the first message that is sending is reinforcing the concern about financing development, which has become even more critical in the last 10 or more years. That said, my choice was that Ringo should continue to engage and to convene African civil society. And the simple question to ask ourselves is, between then and now, what has changed in terms of the power structure that warranted, or that was the motivation, the original motivation for the work that we are doing? And depending on which of the metrics we decide to focus on, so is it in terms of the size of resources that now flow directly from um, global north to the global south, to local organizations in the global south? I don't think anything significant has changed. Someone said 7%, I said my record 0.3% flows directly to local organizations. So in terms of that metrics, not a lot has changed. Um, in terms of the power structure, I think today, especially in the last 2 years, the power structure has probably even worsened. It's now possible, looking at, depending on how you choose to interpret the 8 court that has been announced, it just, confirms the fact that yes, the global north can choose at any point in time what to do with their money. So the power structure hasn't really changed from where it was 6 years ago when Ringo was first conceived. In terms of the, However, in terms of the innovations that Ringo has been able to churn out, the lists we had at the very beginning, and if in 4, 5 years we are removing the plug from this innovation, in my opinion, I think we will be doing that too soon. Uh, Not enough time for those innovations to actually take root, to be able to demonstrate their feasibility and strength, and to be able to provide enough evidence for us to have an objective assessment. I don't want to join those who have called for 10 or 15 years, because democracy itself is a journey. I'm going to say that for as long as these challenges remain, I think Ringo has a relevance in the conversation.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much. So what we're hearing is we haven't made that much headway, but that doesn't mean there isn't a need. But we could evolve what I'm seeing in the chat into, implementation. Isabel has suggested things like implementation toolkits, transition roadmaps, more case studies. So we need more time for those case studies on the actual practical changes that we've worked on, the innovations to embed themselves. That if we disappeared, there would be a gap. There isn't a natural entity kind of to take on what we do. Um, what else are we hearing? We could use a francophone group so maybe Waxy can pull that one together. She said as a hint, hint, hint. And lots of other ideas, but that it's not yet the time to step away because real change does take time. I certainly heard in my group that in fact, with the consolidation over the last couple of years and the consolidation of power, the issues we were facing 5 years ago when we started have become even more acute. So that's something for us to think about. So I'll just summarize the poll. 81% of you said we should continue doing the environment sector work and obviously the African convening work, which is ideal with Waxy in the lead. 25% things we could develop or mainstream those innovations and help to and hand those over to others. Those would need to be identified. 9% of you only thought we should just wind up and close well. And 40% of you had new ideas, but I don't see 40% worth of ideas. So keep adding your ideas into the chat. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Rebecca. Hopefully her Wi-Fi is working.
Thanks, Deborah. And if my Wi-Fi is patchy, so if I disappear, please keep going without me. But that's what we've heard. And you've just summarized it beautifully as you do, Deborah. You know, this is what we've heard in the poll, this is what we've heard in the groups and in the conversation and plenary. So I want to invite back Nana, you, Deborah, others in the Ringo core team to reflect on this. So just for everybody to be aware, you know, this is a conversation. We started with a dilemma. We said we're not sure how to proceed and whether to proceed beyond what we're already committed to. And we asked for your advice and your wisdom, and you've shared that. And now part of the continuing the conversation is to now reflect on that kind of almost as transparently as possible in front of everybody. Like, what are we hearing? What does that mean to us? How is it landing? What are we thinking now? Nana, what about you?
I mean, for me, what I've heard is that Ringo is still needed. And the contexts may have changed somewhat, but the key issues that we set out to address have not been fully addressed. So Ringo is still needed. And that Ringo fills a gap that no one else, even though we have several initiatives, Ringo fills a gap that no one else is filling, and it's needed. And some of those gaps were, for example, a convening space for having some of these very difficult, sensitive conversations and cutting across the different continents. You know, the network that Ringo has and the community, the communal nature of Ringo is one that, you know, really enables discussions in these, you know, some of these areas, and that we should rather scale what's been done and, you know, also engage some communities. And we had some interesting ideas in our group, like students. You know, we have talked about the fact that we are lacking a bit the youth, you know, the youth voice in Ringo. And the idea is that we should look at how we can engage students. And like how we've engaged Akapaka, we should also look at how to engage new communities like students, etc. And then to embed some initiatives that are taking place that need, for example, and an example was given, the OECD DAC call to action that Peace Direct, you know, is leading. How do we, yes, we have a call to action, but how do we actually operationalize it? And the suggestion was that, for example, Peace Direct is already a part of the Ringo community. So how can Peace Direct work, you know, as a member of the community to get many of us to take parts of it and embed it? That was the other thing. And there was an interesting idea about having a map of who is doing what where, if Ringo could provide that kind of information. But I remember that Global Fund for Community Foundation has done something like that. So how can we, for example, ask what's happening to it and how, how we can support them to do that. I asked a question about resources because I was very clear that we have to look at resources, and resources, not only money, but even the human resource to be able to do all these things. Patos, Ida from Patos was part of our group, talked about the fact that Patos, for example, was ready to support in taking up some of the things that had to be done. Are there others within us who can really, support human resource, but also financially, funders that can support the project? If Ringo is needed, then we must resource it to do the work that needs to be done. So I think that's So I'll stop
And
here.
Nana, I'm just going to put you on the spot for one moment more before handing over to Deborah. How does it land with you to hear all of those, Ringo should, Ringo should, Ringo should? What do you feel in response to hearing all of that feedback?
I think in a sense it is a kind of an affirmation that Ringo has been responsive to the needs of the community. But at the same time, the question about resourcing kept on ringing in my mind. I was happy to hear that Ringo is still needed. And that we should look at how we work on different things within the current context. But the question about resourcing kept on ringing in my mind.
Yeah.
How do we resource what has to be done? And how do we then, the community, really, become a part of this and really help to get what has to be done. So that's how. But
so how do we?
It's good to know that, Ringo is still needed.
So how do we oil the wheels? Deborah, do you want to wrap us up here?
My mind is worrying. Barbara just noticed that, Nana's gone. Barbara just noticed that Pando closed. I got a message in my inbox today that Talk to Loop is closing. I think a lot of the common assets that we're really trying to get the sector to work together, to network better, to shift power are closing. And this is always the risk when you move into fighting for survival. So I take Doris's point in the chat. What more can we do as a community? How does it become a community asset? I love the idea of regionalizing. I think that was the idea about Waxy taking on the leadership of an African convening. Acapaca has done that in Latin America. If we can have someone else pick that up, we can't do everything centrally. If it's needed, then the community needs to own some of it for sure. And I also take the point about systems change is a long game. We probably, and the Ringo team did identify this, and I wish it was in more of the options, in one of the options. I'd love to hear people's views. Need to put more pressure on. Someone in my group said, how do we make it a risk to not do this stuff? So there's definitely a role for a convening group to that pressure. And it would be lovely to have some volunteers to widen out our convening group. I think that would be a really positive way forward to bring some fresh new energy. In all honesty, having now done this for 5 years, it does need some of you to come in and pick up and hold us to the fire, but also bring some new energy and ideas to that. Nana.
Yeah, there was a point about us focusing when you talked about the focus on donors, because the point was that if we don't work on donors, I know we did that as part of the action board, the funders group, but the call is that we need to look at how we work with donors, because if we don't change and transform the way donors work, it will not change, or it will affect the transformation when it comes to negatively affect. It comes to INGOs, and other parts of the sector. So that was a very focused suggestion.
That's super clear. Thank you, Nana. Thank you, Deborah, for being willing to immediately reflect back what we're hearing. And we're just coming to a close now. Jim's going to close us out. But if you're still bubbling with ideas, questions, thoughts, please stay on. We will keep the room open for another 15 minutes after the official closing to keep talking, as we often do. And so we invite you to stay on if you can. There's so much energy in the chat right now. Over to you, Jim.
Thank you very, very much, Rebecca. It was really good to gather the sense of what has been emerging from the conversations. Thanks to everyone, for joining this conversation today. It's really been an amazing time with all of us here. When I look at the chat, it has some very rich insights that have been shared with all of us, and the conversations have equally been very, very rich. When I take on Smith's words, he says, living is not an option for Ringo. That is really a very strong affirmation. Indeed, thanks to everyone for the rich participation in today's session. It has always been a community, and indeed it's always a pleasure to share in the Ringo community. And your ideas have always driven this agenda up to this very moment, and they remain a catalyst. Even what has been shared in today's session will definitely catalyze the way forward. Ringo will get in touch with you all, and if you have any other insights, do not hesitate to reach out to the Ringo team. You can drop them in the chat. The Google form is still very much available for us to make use of it and populate it, today till the end of this day. We appreciate all the brilliant ideas and suggestions that have come in so far, and we will do our utmost best to take them forward in subsequent conversations within the Ringo team and the Ringo community. And of course, we will bring updates to you through our various communication channels. In fact, this is actually our last Ringo Connect meeting, but there are different alternatives, different opportunities to stay engaged with Ringo. You can sign up to our newsletter, and we do well to share with you updates from the Ringo community, the Ringo prototypes, and different actions within the ecosystem that we can follow up with. You can follow us on LinkedIn, and of course, you can be part of the closed LinkedIn group. If you request to join that group, we will add you to it. Please, the links are being shared in the chat at this moment. Feel free to sign up to any of them so we stay engaged. In fact, that's it for the official part of this particular meeting. It has been a pleasure to be with you all. And of course, some of us would want to stay on, to continue reflecting on some of these or have a quick chat after this official part. So we just have 15 minutes, after the official closing to just stay on and continue the conversations. From all of us here at the Ringo team, it's been a wonderful time sharing with you today. Thank you, Sparkle, Mabel, and Charles for giving us, that brief overview of the journey. You made a 6 years journey to look so seamless within just 30 minutes. Thank you, Nana. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks to everyone. And of course, the amazing Sparkle and the wonderful tech team at Ringo. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. We are really, really pleased to have spent this wonderful time with you. And
oh yes, hello. Not real me.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I just suggest that since the human resources are there, could the head of Ringo, the core head, look into what can be done to commercialize a certain part of Ringo that can sponsor the charitable side of it, so that Ringo will keep being there, because some of us, we just love it. We just love Ringo being there,
That's very nice.
That's my suggestion.
Normal chat. I just sort of jumped in there. Sorry, Jim.
Oh,
Go back to
thank you very much, Deborah. It was a good transition. Thank you very much. I think we will just take the hands that are raised. So if you have a perspective to share, to make some sense from the conversations that have just taken place, feel free to drop it in the chat or just raise your hand. Dio, please, you have the mic.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks everyone for the very rich conversation so far. I'd like to ask a question and then I would also make a few suggestions. So my question is not directed at anyone in particular, but I'm really curious, really, what is the motivation for this sunset conversation? The question about should we be winding down Ringo, what has sparked it? I'm curious. Now, that said, depending on or however we decide on the future, or whatever we decide the future of Ringo should be, I'd like us to consider a few things which I shared in my um, breakout during the breakout session. I think that there are quite a number of innovations that Ringo already has. I would like to encourage us to consider how to plug some of these innovations into various forums and convenings. So, looking at institutions at the global level, at continental level, at regional level, even national level, where we can begin to plug in some of these innovations. I think, secondly, I'd like to encourage us to be more intentional in thinking about how do we draw attention of scholars, researchers into the work of Ringo the last 6 years. Because from experience, a lot of good work is done by civil society groups, and they basically end up on their shelves or they're filed away in some reports to donors. Now, even if donors are saying, withdrawing, exiting from, future support of this work, I think by intentionally drawing attention of scholars and academia, many of us are very connected researchers to take interest in what has happened the last 6 years. We stand a chance of learning from an independent, third eye what has been done, and probably hearing from them new insights into what we could do differently. And there's always that possibility that could spark new conversations. The third point I'd like to make is about, and again, this time I'm speaking as an African. So I'd like us to be intentional in plugging into some of the anchor institutions and conversations that are currently happening across Africa, especially those that we could potentially leverage. So at the AU level, where are the openings and opportunities to upscale and have some high level attention to the work that Ringo has done? So what within Ringo in the last 6 years, for example, could become an agenda conversation in our engagement with the AU, in our engagement with SADC, in our engagement with ECOWAS, or any of those organizations, or even at national level. Which of these innovations could potentially become something to start using as an agenda for engaging national planning commissions. In the case of Nigeria, for example, the National Planning Commission is the supervising ministry for all INGO and donor work in the country. So if we are engaging and partnering with these organizations, they could become another pathway to actually influencing the work of our NGOs and donors in our countries. So essentially, my point is, let's think about new partnerships that could help to amplify some of the work that Ringo has done. Let's look at new opportunities where we can convert the innovations of coming out of the staple of Ringo into agenda for those forums, for those convenings. And my last point is to say I fully endorse the recommendation that we should think about a set of conveners or a working group that is able to continue to preserve and advance the motivations and the values and the principles that Ringo actually represents, without necessarily suggesting that Waxy should begin to fund that. But I think having this informal gathering is going to be an important insurance to guarantee that the conversation continues to happen, and that we continue to pay attention to the motivation for this idea 6 years ago, but which remains relevant even today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dayo, for those very rich insights. And I love the recommendations that have been shared. Thank you. Shatkuli, please. There is a question from Dayo. Please, Shatkuli, before you come in, there is a question from Dayo. What is the motivation for the sunset conversation? Please, I will come back to that question, at some point.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Actually, this is the most important. The sunset conversation is the point, then after the sunrise conversation will start. So we have completed our 6 years journey in the Ringo community. We have raised various issues. We have learned many things. And of course, we have achieved very much important achievements for the global CSOs. And what I think is for the next phase and for the another morning of the conversation, it would be good to focus on how can we materialize the grand bargain, localization, shift the power, system change, so many other things. And we need to help the donor community and INGOs. I think they may have some challenges and problem that they are not being able to materialize their commitment. And it will be good to understand their problem. We can discuss among us to identify their challenges, problems, and we can help them for the new morning. We can make some plan and we can develop our strategy to help them to materialize their commitment so that we will be in the comfort zone, we will be in the real power gaining position, resource gaining position, and that will be the final goal, I think. So this is not the sunset conversation. I think this is the conversation that the next conversation will be the sunrise conversation. So we'll start the new journey by the new morning. Yes, that's my side. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shatkuli, for those sharp insights. Very, very helpful. I can see Van Hoffen, sharing some hearts with you for your perspective. And over to you, Rainier. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I feel a bit hesitant to speak because I'm one of those donors. But I'm also a person who's been working for many years in the civil society space. And I just love to embrace what our brother from Nepal just mentioned. He, just in between lines, talked about global CSOs. There you have your reimagined INGO, even in the very word. It's not international non-governmental organization. It is global civil society organizations. So we're talking about a global civil society movement in which the North equally needs the South as vice versa. And I liked his remark about help them to materialize their commitment. God, what a nice way of saying it. You know, it's not about demanding what they have promised, but help them to live up to their commitments. This is the real challenge we are having in the West, in many donor countries where we are our ODA, percentages are dwindling. So we are not living up to our commitments. That's for sure. That's clear by the statistics of OECD and others. So. But rather than being disappointed, etc., to take the other road and say, okay, how can we help? That is so tremendously thought-provoking. Yeah, I've said it in a few chats during the session. I think I was one of the persons who voted in favor of dissolving it because it is too much northern persons driven. Too much. I don't say we should be absent, but I don't think we should have prominence. There has to be a level playing field much more than there has been in the past 5-6 years. How to achieve that would probably be, that was one of my other suggestions, to look at the European space and see that there are actual big challenges in the European space on civil society. And look at the actors who are there in the European space who need each other, equally as African actors need each other and South American NGOs need each other. So it is the transnational movement that I like to very much encourage, but it should not be always north-south or whatever. It should be more in your direct neighborhood, connecting to like-mindeds, try to make a change for the better of the continent, wherever you are based. And the northern NGOs increasingly are taking this responsibility also upon themselves to do that for their domestic situations. Domestically, they have also quite some challenges, even though that may not be in material ways, but in other ways. But even materially, I think there are the big divides in our societies as well. And I've spoken too long already. I just want to emphasize also the other colleague who mentioned about academic engagement. I thought that was a very good outcome of Ringo when you engaged with academia and did the research program. And to get that independent validation of the relevance of the issues that you bring up is very important. Because ask a community whether they should dissolve, of course you get a no, because they're a community, So I found it a bit of an odd question, and not feeling part of the community, but very much still befriended to the community. I would say no, please dissolve it in order for those other communities at the continents to grow and to blossom, and then reconnect once in a while and see how it's going, and then be accountable to one another about how it's going. I stop there, but lots of encouragement for those that take it on to the continent wherever they are. Organize those in-person meetings. I think those are very important because that's where the real relationships are brokered. And the Accra reset, I think, serves as an example, that may be followed. So thank you for that example as well.
Thank you very, very much, Rainier. Very insightful perspectives there, and we do appreciate. I'll be coming to you, Nana and Deborah, because we have just 15 minutes and we've exceeded. But let me read what Luke has shared in the chat. Ringo gave energy to people who have been creative collectively, but also individually. Let's remember, it all started during COVID when we were all apart and afar, yet realizing lots of common thoughts, a common urge. These thoughts became prototypes and live on in different places of experimentation. These places still fill gaps and needs. I trust the original group and ideas can live on, but can now move there and occasionally reconvene and share at local, regional, global level when needed. That would be good already. Thank you very much, Luke. I'm sorry I can't read everything in the chat. But there is a question. I don't know. Deborah or Nana, would you want to share some thoughts on that? What is or what was the motivation for the sunset conversation?
I think, Nana, you should answer that.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think, well, I mean, like I said, an unexamined life is not worth living. We have been doing this on this journey for the last 6 years, and we've had different iterations, different phases. And in this third phase, particularly with the constraints on resourcing, and also being very conscious of different initiatives that are coming up, some with similar objectives to Ringo. It's not the same configuration, but in terms of what what they are looking at, we had to ask ourselves, and as a team, we were discussing: is Ringo still relevant? Are we still adding value? Because that was the whole point of beginning this journey in the first place. To say, there's been a lot of talk. We need action. We need change. We need to see transformation happening. And therefore, we were going to go through a process to kind of investigate what is happening, but also come up with certain solutions. And that's what we've been doing, And the question is, what is it that we are bringing to the table that would actually make a difference? And one of the points that I think I saw Barbara notes, I don't know if she's still on Barbara, who used to be with ZGF, notes is that Ringo was set up to look at INGUs, changing the ecosystem with INGUs as the vehicle. But over the period, we have looked at the broader global ecosystem, because there are so many things that are connected. And that's the way that Ringo has evolved over the years. So this really was about examining where we are and what we need to be doing next. And we didn't want to do it just as the core team, because Ringo is a community. And so we said, let's have a discussion with all the people who have been part of this, and even new people who are interested in Ringo and what it is that we are doing, to really decide on the next step that we have to take. Because whatever decision we take, we also have to look at the resourcing that as well. And it has to be something that has the buy-in from the community that, is part of this. So yeah, that's the reason.
Thank you very much, Nana, for those insights.
I don't know, Deborah, do you have anything else to add? Anything?
No, I think it's also maybe because we've been going for a while from the center, the energy has felt diffused. People are pulled in many directions. When we started, everyone was caught in the headlights because of COVID. We had people's attention. And with each year, that attention has waned a bit. In all honesty, it's very hard to keep the momentum. So we need to keep evolving. I think we all recognize the work is not done, and things are, in fact, more challenging now than they were when we started. But there's also, as I said in my little breakout group, one of the groups that we've been working with, Yukta, in the reverse call for proposals. If I'm a funder, and be interesting to hear from the funders that are in the room, they're faced with a lot of choices. Do I fund a systems change project that will maybe make an impact in 5 or 10 years, or do I fund Yukta? to get on with what Yukta does in Liberia, right? So there's some very real choices that we're feeling from the resourcing side. People's energy is diffuse. So I think that conversation, as Nana said, we want to examine what's the best use of us and how do we resource that? It's not, is our work done? We might as well go away and give up. I don't think any of us feel that at all. But it was a very real question about how do you continue that momentum? How do you resource that momentum? Just one other reflection, when we moved from phase 1 to phase 2, and we had our prototypes, we set up host organizations for those prototypes. And I think all but one of those organizations ran with it. The rest of them floundered for various different reasons, and there was no blame there at all. So we kind of took that role back in house. But it's always very good, as Dora said, for people to say, you should do that, you should do that. You need people to pick up that energy. So that was another thing we're asking. How do we transition to strengthen new energy for this work that is clearly needed?
Thank you very much, Deborah and Nana, for those insights. And thanks to everyone for staying on. We hoped to stay on for 15 minutes, but we've hit almost 25 minutes and counting. But I think it will be good to wrap up at this juncture. And to thank everyone for the rich insights, for staying on with Ringo all these years, and even within this specific conversation of today. Of course, the Ringo conversations continue. You can stay in touch with the Ringo team via any of our communication channels. There is a closed LinkedIn group, so if you'd like to join that group, feel free to request to join, and we will invite you onto it, into the group. So thank you all very much for participating in this conversation. The link has been shared in the chat, please. We look forward to staying engaged online, and we will keep you updated on developments within the Ringo community. Merci beaucoup et